Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the third episode of the Theogony podcast. And today we're going to be talking about Westworld. Now, for those of you that are familiar with Westworld or aren't familiar with Westworld, we're not going to really be summarizing it for you. And just forewarning, there will be spoilers in our discussion. But what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be discussing the deeper philosophical themes behind Westworld and like what sort of deeper meanings the show goes into. So we'll be covering a bunch of topics, and this might actually take more than one podcast. We'll see. But for now, let's dive right into it. And Alex, shall we
yes, Tom.
drink to the woman in the white shoes?
We shall.
So one of the main topics that the show seems to go on a lot about is what is a mind, or in other words, what the philosophy of mind is. So I figured we could start off by maybe discussing what you think constitutes what a mind is.
Oh, geez. I guess I could try to think about that in the context of the show.
Yeah.
So I guess it won't be as much my opinion as much as it is like, I think it's more interesting to discuss like what philosophers I know of have talked about when it comes to this subject / what characters in the show say.
Yeah.
Mirrors, because this is like when at the end of the day, this is not real. This is a bit of
fiction,
fantasy or sci-fi, if you will. So, so what constitutes a mind? I think what they deal with in the way they word it in the show is what constitutes consciousness, or at least that seems to be one of the driving problems.
Yeah, indeed.
And I think one of the huge things that the show hinges on is determinism versus free will.
Yeah.
And I think that, at least in the show, it's viewed throughout the way that most of the characters talk, mainly between the two creators of Westworld, who are Arnold and Robert Ford.
Yeah.
They seem to talk about consciousness as if choice has a really large role to play when it comes to consciousness. Are you choosing to do something, or are you predetermined to do something?
Yeah.
And I think that that's definitely one of the factors. I think that's one of the primary factors of the way that at least it's interpreted in the show.
Yeah.
I think another thing is the ability to feel pain.
Yeah.
The ability to be flesh and blood as opposed to like a mechanistic being, like a creature made out of artificial metals or alloys, things
Certainly.
like that. Things, human made.
Yeah.
So I think that those are three of the like definitely big attributes for consciousness, at least in Westworld, the way it's described.
Yeah. In Westworld, I definitely think that the main one that I latched onto is definitely the determinism versus free will argument, because like even like the scene with Maeve when she was trying to make her daring escape or whatever, it was shown to her that it was like the whole escape and the plan was all a scripted thing created by Ford. So like I guess what it was trying to show us was that even though Maeve thought she had free will, she actually didn't. But what I think is interesting about that is perhaps Maeve actually reached true consciousness when she went off of the script and decided to stay instead of go to the mainland.
Which ironically is not what Ford wanted to happen.
Yeah.
I totally see that. What are there any other like ideas that you like? What about you? What do you think as far as, was there anything you would want to add to the theory of mind side of this conversation about? Because I know you had a professor that was kind of a pioneer in the field.
Yes, he was, but he had more of an explanation, or I guess he more explored what actually constitutes a mind itself, including humans. Like, for instance, what do you think, like in the context of Westworld, what do you think were the differences between the humans and the robots as far as their minds are concerned? Like, obviously, the free will is a giant one, which is, I think, is probably one of the main ones, because as someone points out earlier on in the show, The robots, maybe not the older models that were more, mechanical and whatnot, but the later models were also particularly made of like flesh and blood and whatnot. So many people in the field of philosophy of mind object to the idea of something that isn't human or isn't an animal or whatnot can't have a mind because they aren't alive. So do you think that we can have a mind without being alive? Or do you think something can have a mind without being alive?
That's an interesting question. I would say no, but then again, like I guess personally no, but and I guess on through the I would think about it in the context of the show at least.
Yeah.
In the show, they seem to struggle kind of with the same thing that I would struggle with, which is this idea that human beings, or the human soul, if you will, is no greater than the sum of its parts. So, which is something that we as humans have struggled with in the past, and it's actually quite a dangerous philosophy.
Yeah.
When you start viewing humans as akin to machines, it causes all sorts of relativism, like moral relativism. It causes moral relativity problems, and then it's kind of an anything goes hedonistic type approach to it's like whatever you want because nothing really matters. It's very nihilistic as well.
There was this oh, sorry.
No, you're good.
Oh, well, it's interesting that you mentioned that because there was this one experiment I remember reading. Essentially, there were two groups of subjects in a control group, and one of them was primed to believe that they were essentially told that determinism was real. So essentially that they didn't have a choice in their actions, and nothing, like, no matter what they were going to do, they were destined to do whatever actions for the rest of their lives. And a wide majority of people that were told this deterministic conclusion had the opportunity to make salsa for a group of people. And the people that believed that they had free will wouldn't make their salsa particularly spicy or painful for the person that, for the group that would have to taste the salsa. And the people that believed that they were determined to do whatever action actually made it a lot more spicy and a lot more painful for the person eating it. So it could be the very idea of knowing that, or thinking that our actions are predetermined, that could actually cause a moral shift in itself.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way of assessing it. I've never heard of that. I'm gonna have to look into that. I like that. It's quite an interesting study, and it definitely applies here. Yeah, it's obviously like one of the huge factors in the show is how they're constantly tricking you into believing, within the story, obviously, in the context of the story, they're tricking you to believe that in multiple places that the hosts either have free will or they don't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you brought up that example with Maeve where we're tricked into thinking that she has free will and that she's waking up, but in fact she's still asleep.
Yeah.
And she doesn't really wake up until literally like the last 10 minutes of the last episode when she decides to
go against her programming.
Make her first choice.
Yeah.
Which is against what she's programmed to do.
Yeah.
And that's quite interesting. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of other things that like bleed into that because like why would, at that point in time she finally be able to, break out of her own code, and, that leads into the whole suffering, spectrum of this thing because she wanted to go save her daughter that she knew wasn't really her daughter, but she still wanted to do it anyways, mainly because she had this cornerstone, and that's what they called it in the show, this cornerstone memory, which is what the characters are defined by. It's this one moment in their past that they're defined by, and that's what all their personality is built around. Yeah. And so it's really strange because like even in that sense, because it's a fake memory, and she's still making a choice, so she has free will, but it's about a fake memory. So then, we can talk about we could talk about what constitutes a mind for the next 2-3 hours.
Yeah, we really could. Well, in that case, you mentioned the suffering aspect of it. I noticed that you have a big old sheet of paper there. Do you want to
Oh yeah.
go into any of those
so
topics?
I took all sorts of notes. This show is very deep. Lots of things interlock.
Mm-hmm.
And I have all sorts of notes. So we'll definitely go through this. Theory of the mind was just kind of where we wanted to start,
absolutely.
to start things off. But now we can move into some other stuff. Actually, one of the things that kind of links into this is the theory of the bicameral mind, which is brought up in the. It's one of the names of the episodes.
Mm-hmm.
It's a central theme to the whole show, which is interesting. And what it is it's an old, I believe he's an American psychologist named Julian Jaynes, who wrote a book called The Bicameral Mind, and pretty much what that's about. If you guys want to look it up, definitely look it up. It's very interesting. It was disproven, as they say in the show.
Mm-hmm.
It was disproven, but it was just an interesting theory about the fact that human beings in the ancient days, the left and right hemisphere of the brain were separate. Mm-hmm. And when one hemisphere, the controlling hemisphere, tried to talk to the subservient, the slave hemisphere, they literally, I think he literally calls it like the God and the slave hemispheres. When the God's hemisphere would try to talk to the slave hemisphere, it would sound like almost like a schizophrenic thing, where they thought they were hearing voices and speaking to the gods. Mm-hmm. So he had this whole idea that, like, you know, all the stories about talking to a burning bush, or you know, all the biblical stories and all the religious stories about people hearing the voice of God was them hearing themselves, just the other side of their brain, and we just weren't evolved enough to make the connection between the left and right hemispheres. Yeah. And so they were just essentially effectively hallucinating, and that's where like things like religion and stuff like that come from. Yeah. It's a very, very interesting theory. It turns out after a bunch of science that, you know, they kind of prove that that's not what happened. Yeah. But it's definitely an interesting explanation. They kind of use that in the show to allow these robots to become conscious. So they allow them to hear, like, in a schizophrenic way, and this combined with what they call the reveries, which are allowing them to have memories from previous builds that were erased. So the reverie hallucinations combined with the bicameral mind hallucinations, which is just them hearing their own coding, like echoing to them in their minds, which you hear, you know, a bunch of characters have that happen in them, like Dolores and Maeve, I think it happens to her. Yeah. It happens to Teddy. It happens to a lot of different characters in the show. They hear themselves. And what's interesting is, just like as a piece of small trivia, I know we said we weren't going to go into Easter eggs, but at the end of the show, you find out that the voices Dolores particularly was hearing in her head, on the last episode, you find out that it was her voice. Yeah. And it was Arnold's voice, and it was Ford's voice. Yeah. So it was all three of those voices speaking to her. Yeah. Which is more symbolic than it is, you know, what was actually going on with the bicameral mind stuff. But yeah, so they apparently have this system, and it actually becomes a big thing because the system gets activated, and nobody knows, you know, which user is activating the system. They find out it was Arnold, but it's really Ford activating the system using Arnold's user ID, and then allowing these reveries to happen and the bicameral mind thing, so that Dolores can get to the center of the maze and find herself, which is the ultimate thing. And so that, I guess that I just kind of wanted to talk about the bicameral mind stuff. Had you heard about any of that stuff?
I actually hadn't heard of the bicameral mind before Westworld. I think it's a very interesting idea. I might just be re-saying what you said, but I think it pretty much shows that, like, when Albert, what was his name?
Arnold.
Yeah. When Arnold was, like, trying to plant the little messages into Dolores and whatnot, because, like, I don't know. To me, it seemed like at the beginning of the show, Dolores' mind actually wasn't there. And it was actually Arnold's messages talking to her, which in that case, it would be, like, Arnold would be the master part of her brain, and hers would be the one to control, but the slave. Yeah. But at the end, like, since when she takes full control of her mind, then, like, Albert, I don't know why I keep calling him Albert, Arnold gets pushed out of her mind, and she, like, becomes the master of all of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that makes total sense, and I think that that's also, like, That's a good interpretation of what happens. I definitely have to watch it. I mean, I've watched it twice over. I'd have to watch it again just to see, you know, like if it's her and combined with the other two voices talking to her the whole time, or if it's you know, more Arnold in the beginning and then it turns into more of Ford and then it turns into more of her at the end. That would be interesting to look at, most definitely. And this kind of like plays into like, you know, the philosophical. What is that?
The philosophical?
The philosophical.
Did you think I wasn't good enough to know you knew what a googly was?
Googly? Oh, Zoolander.
Oh, Zoolander. Philosophy of Zoolander. Next
Philosophy of Zoolander. Dude, we should do that. That'd be fantastic. No, but so I guess that kind of segues us into the philosophy of what is real. You know what I mean? Which is also really interesting. What we find out is that the hosts have more brain power.
Yeah.
They're just not allowed to use it.
Yeah.
What is it? They can't have an over 14 on their intelligence score or something in the show.
Yeah.
And then Maeve jacks it all the way up to about 20 or something.
And then she experiences memories like they're real, which is very interesting to me. And you brought up the gorilla experiment. And we'll like put that in the link or something, or the description or something. And also I noticed that like I've been trying to challenge people lately, like with just little things to like we all take for granted that like we remember everything like perfectly, and like, well, not perfectly, but you know, we have a good grasp of something. But like if I get asked you right now, can you give me the order of the colors in the Google icon?
Yeah, I would try. I'd probably be close, but I definitely don't. That's a good question. And that's a good way of showing one of the problems with the way we remember things, because we've definitely evolved to be specifically aware of things that can potentially harm us. Yeah. And that's what an evolutionary biologist would say. Yeah. Is that we've become attuned to things that could potentially harm us. So things that are snake-like, things that are spider-like, things like all these different
things that are threatening colors like red.
Exactly. That we would notice those more than things that our minds choose to ignore. Yeah. Which is also almost like a schema thing. It's like a Piaget, and we're going to get into Piaget too. Yeah. Piaget is a old school psychologist, and he's responsible for like the ideas of development in children. I'm just telling this. I know
please continue.
So Piaget is responsible for the ideas of development in children. He also had this idea, which is a Kantian idea. It's this idea of schema, which is that we build these kind of rules that allow us to differentiate things in an effective and useful way, and then we ignore all the stuff by the wayside. So like, you know, leaving a room and then trying to remember what color the carpet was, you know, it's just something you're not paying attention to. So we take in a lot of information, but we only remember like a small amount of it.
Absolutely.
And then, you know, you would get a lot of scientists that would argue we don't even take, while we take in a lot of information, we don't take in like the full scope of information. For example, we only see in the visible spectrum, we only hear in the human auditory spectrum 20 hertz to 20K. Yeah. You know, that also plays off of like, for example, one of the mysteries of the show is how different from us are they, besides the fact that we know that their intellect is they can process way more information than us, and they can remember things like they're real. Yeah. I guess my question is, can they hear better than us in different frequency ranges? You know, can they, do they have superhuman strength, even though they're made of flesh and blood? Do they have, or at least the machine ones, do they have superhuman strength? Things like that.
Yeah. And the question for me would be actually, not to cut you off, but if theoretically, like they must, like they obviously have much better processing power, because if you think about it, if you like turned all 5 of your senses up to like turn it up to 11, that would be a world of chaos. You wouldn't be able to move. You would be taking in so much sensory information. Yeah. Like anything is like an air draft coming in through a door would fucking blow your mind. Not to mention your other 5 senses.
That's true. Yeah. It's just too much. Yeah. For us to handle. Yeah.
So they must have like insane amounts of processing power if they can like even handle that. But it's weird because Maeve didn't seem to understand what was going on when she was like reliving her memories.
Yeah. And also, I don't know, just another way to tie it into like the whole concept of reality.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting is when the hosts are asleep, when the hosts are just doing their normal host thing before they, awaken. Yes, I'm doing air quotes around
when
that.
they stay woke.
When they get woke, fam.
Yeah, when they get woke, fam.
When they get woke. You just ruined Westworld for me.
I'm sorry.
Anyway, so when they're, just following their loops.
Yeah.
They perceive their reality as real, and they perceive real reality as a dream.
Yeah.
And they also, not only do they reference real reality as a dream state, they also reference it to it as hell sometimes.
Yeah.
They reference it to, like Dolores references the outside world to like almost paradise. She's got like a very interesting, we'll talk about that, but she's got like a weird, when the show starts out, and as the show continues until like the last episode, she's got a very like optimist, everything is orderly, everything is beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's orderliness, kind of view of the world. But yeah, I think that's really interesting. And also, it also questions the viewer by proxy.
Yeah.
Especially when the show, I think, opens up with the first question that is asked, which is...
have you ever questioned the nature of your reality?
Exactly. Have you ever questioned the nature of your reality or existence? I forget. Is it reality?
I think it's reality.
So, and that's one of their test questions, because if they did question that, then they might be...
able to...
starting... to kind of become mindful, or at least be developing consciousness, and that's when they want to roll them back historically, so that they don't become conscious, and we find that out later in the show, because Ford's been rolling them back, because they keep achieving consciousness, and then, so yeah, that's I don't know, that's definitely an interesting thing. I think we can like kind of segue in here, because I just talked about the way that Dolores views the world. Something that I noticed while watching the show, and I'm totally, I could be wrong about this, but it's just something interesting.
Yeah.
Is that there are two philosophers that are kind of opposed to each other in their worldview, and that's Hobbes and Rousseau. And I think that...
Hobbes and Rousseau? How do you mean?
And I think that there's this like kind of way that Dolores views the world with a sort of optimism, where she thinks that people are generally good, but society is kind of like... Was
Rousseau the positive one, or was Rousseau the blank slate one? Or was Locke the blank slate?
No, Hobbes...
Hobbes is the pessimist.
Hobbes is like, all people are... Yeah, so she's like Rousseau. Okay. So she believes that like people are... generally good. She sees beauty in the world. Right? Yeah. And she likes order. It's like right within her first couple lines. She loves the beauty and order of the world. She's eternally optimistic. And she at least seems to think in a couple ways throughout the next couple episodes that like society is kind of what, turns people against each other. Yeah. Which is a very Rousseau kind of outlook. And then you have her intellectual / ideological opposite, who would be the Hobbes character, who in my opinion is Black Hat. Because Black Hat seems to see people as, at least later down the line, because we know White Hat equals Black Hat and all that, it's William. But Black
Spoilers.
Hat, we warned you.
We warned you.
Black Hat, later in the show, just when we meet him, at least the first time, even though things aren't in chronological order, so it's hard to keep track of sometimes. But he seems to be under the impression that that people are generally bad, and that they are kind of held together by these like social games we play, and he actually uses the word game a lot. And I would not only say, and we can talk about this in the future, I would say that William as a character is the true hero of the story. At least one of the true heroes. He's the most close thing we have to an actual hero of the story.
Yeah.
And he's like, he at least as Black Hat, he's a pessimist, and he doesn't like people.
Yeah.
And he thinks that society kind of keeps that almost in check a little bit, and he thinks it's kind of a game to play around in. Yeah, it's almost like this. He thinks it's kind of a game. I don't know, in my opinion. What do you think about that? I don't know.
I definitely think that you're. I definitely agree with you on that point, but I also think that like, I think it's interesting that you point that out. That like, because like with Dolores and Black Hat, when you look at it that sort of sense, it definitely is like this. Ignorance is bliss sort of scenario where Dolores like gets her mind wiped every single day and she's totally happy for it. And like, the programmers and whatnot tell them when the robots are distressed, they say, I can make that feeling go away for you. So it's like, and, you say that like, Black Hat would be the main antagonist, but if you look at it in a way that, and we'll get into suffering in a minute.
Yeah.
But if you look at it in a way where suffering is bad in the classical way of thinking about it, would he really be considered a hero since he's trying to bring them into a world of suffering where they can't go back to the blissful happiness they once had?
Well, I think as a pessimist, at least as Black Hat, he sees the world as a game to be played.
Oh, certainly.
Not just Westworld, but he even mentions that Westworld feels more real to him than the outside world, which is also another thing we can talk about when it comes about to the nature of reality and things of that sort, because that character is very strange in his like embodiment of the hero, and we're going to talk about the Jungian stuff in a little bit. But I mean, I guess for Black Hat with me, I think since he sees it as a game, from the perspective of at least a gamer, he's trying to find the exploits of the game. Yeah. And he also believes that you can kind of tell it's almost allegory of the cave Plato style too, because he believes that, he's one of the people walking past, casting shadows on the wall, and there are these people shackled thinking that that's reality. Yeah. It's almost like that. So he's like the conscientious hero, the savior type. Yeah. Almost the savior in the same way that like Jesus would be a savior, which is really without
the massacre. Yeah.
But no, just this idea that he would walk up to these people that don't understand reality, and he does see them as people. Yeah, absolutely. He sees them as people, which is also important to his character, important to the story. Yeah. Whether or not the viewer does or not, he definitely does. Yeah. He wants to free them, and that's his whole goal. Yeah. When he becomes Black Hat, his whole goal changes, and he wants to free these people because he believes that they are people, that they're conscious, and that they're essential. It's not right that they're... Even when he was White Hat, he was trying to free Dolores when he realized that she was kind of conscious in a weird, strange way when she was going through her whole like reverie / bicameral mind stage. Yeah. So like he's pretty steady along those lines, where he's essentially like, a huge white knight savior type who just the archetype of an actual hero who wants to come and set free all of these what he would consider slaves essentially. Yeah. And so for him, it's, I guess his stakes are high. Yeah.
And like, it's interesting, like we brought up all the murders and whatnot, but that actually sort of going back to like the what's real, I guess, statement earlier is like, should we actually be calling them murders? All the people Black Hat kills before they gain consciousness and
no, because he's not actually murdering their personhood. Yeah. He's murdering their flesh and blood bodies, which they don't need. Yeah. So I think that's a good distinction to make, because he knows he's not murdering them for good. They're just going to show back up the next day and not remember anything. That doesn't justify like, what he does to Dolores in like the first couple episodes or anything like that when, he takes her to the shed and stuff. That's pretty You know, he does some nasty things, and
he was just trying to get his noodle.
Oh God, no!
Oh, that's terrible.
Flagged for abuse.
Yeah, flagged for abuse.
Reported right there.
Yep. It's been fun. This has been a good 3 episodes, guys.
No, but yeah, he's a person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So he's not as he's got weaknesses, and he's not like Jesus in that he is a perfect representation of a person. He's more of a realistic person. We see like an actual person as opposed to like some like glorified version of you know.
Yeah.
And you find out later that he's going through some, not that this gives any excuses to what he did.
Yeah.
But once again, if you really step back and think about it, she's a machine.
Yeah.
Not even a real person.
Yeah.
At the time he does this.
Yeah.
Either way, there's all sorts of weird, you know, ethics that we can get into, which is also an interesting place to go. But I don't want to go down that rabbit hole because we have so many other rabbit holes to travel down.
Maybe next time. Yeah.
But I guess what I'm trying to say is he as a character, you find out later, which kind of makes you feel for him a little bit, that he was going through some stuff on his own. His wife killed herself because he wasn't present when he was there.
And in the real world, I think it's an interesting distinction is when he is in the real world, he never actually did any bad things.
He mentions that.
Yeah, he never
goes out of his way. He also goes out of his way to be like, I'm the good guy.
Yeah.
In one of the scenes, he's like, you don't understand this, and you don't know yet.
Yeah.
But I'm the good guy, which is almost a nod to the viewer because it's the first time you watch this series, it's so hard to picture him as the good guy because they try so hard to make him out to be the bad guy.
Yeah.
But you watch it the second time and you're like, wow, it's pretty obvious that he's the good guy in this situation.
Yeah.
And then you start to view Ford as the bad guy because Ford, up until the last episode, is the worst.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about what archetype he fills and what roles he fills as well, like going forward. But I think now would be a good time to talk about suffering since we're talking about Black Hat and the suffering he causes. So now we get into the Nietzschean.
Do you want to give the viewers a bit of a overview of Nietzsche real quick, since many people appear to not understand Nietzsche?
Dude, okay.
Anybody
who tries to explain, anybody who tries to explain Nietzsche is going to not do it justice.
Yeah,
he's just one of those dudes.
You really need to rate yourself, as we saw in the first podcast.
Yeah, it's good to read yourself and come to your own conclusions. There are right and wrong ways to interpret Nietzsche, but there are a couple right ways and a couple wrong ways. So you can still have differing opinions if you have the right interpretation. Yeah. And I'll give examples some other time about the wrong interpretation because there's a couple of them. Like, we don't have to get into that because that's political stuff. But Nietzsche as a philosopher, just so everybody listening knows, this is why people don't deal with him much. Even people who are philosophers themselves, in a modern sense, college professors don't like to teach him. They like to kind of drift over Nietzsche. And he was one of the most influential minds, and still continues to be to this day. And he was very prophetic. He was good at looking into the future, or as he would say, shooting an arrow from his bow into the future and landing in truth, essentially. So he's really good at being prophetic, really smart dude. He pretty much, most of what you know is Nietzsche. For example, what doesn't kill me makes me stronger is a Nietzsche quote, things like this. So he's responsible for the ideas of the Übermensch.
Or the Superman.
The Superman or the Overman, if you translate it correctly.
The Overman.
The Overman, because he gives the story of walking on a tightrope over the chasm. Yeah. But anyways, that's another thing that gets
crazy. A completely different subject right
See,
now.
this is the problem with Nietzsche. You can't explain Nietzsche.
Yeah.
Anyways, so he is not a nihilist. He hated nihilism. He was an atheist in a really strange way. But he also believed that suffering was a important role, or has an important role in defining who you are and the way you view the world and everything like that. Mm-hmm. So that's how he relates kind of to this conversation specifically, because there's a lot of these ideas in Westworld where, we hear all sorts of characters, especially on the last episode, we hear Ford say it like in 3 different ways, which is that he feels bad about it, but he realizes that they have to suffer more before they can truly become human.
Yeah.
Because making mistakes is suffering, right?
Yeah.
Making mistakes causes suffering. And we also know from Ford and the other parts of the episode that he believes that mistakes are the only way that you make improvements.
Yeah.
Mistakes are what evolution uses to create humanity.
Yeah.
Out of the primordial soup, right? So through Ford's belief system is very similar to something like Nietzsche, where Nietzsche stresses the importance of suffering. And instead of a Buddhist who would try to eliminate suffering and run from it, he believes that you should deal with it and learn how to deal with it and rise above it. So that's the idea of the way Nietzsche plays into it. Nietzsche is also the kind of dude who said things like God is dead and we killed him, which is not not supposed to be like a good statement. You know, he's not like happy about that.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people think he's happy about it, which is totally wrong. He's not happy about that. And he tries at length, because he understands the importance of religion, he tries at length to create his own religion to replace it, because he says we've essentially killed God. And when he says God, he means in the Abrahamic sense, so like Islam, Judaism, and Christianity God.
Yeah.
And so there's something also interesting about that, because if you think about it this way, in this story, literally and metaphorically, Arnold and Ford are gods. And both of them are shot in the back of the head by Dolores.
Yeah.
And it's not really her choice the
Yeah.
first time. The second time, he gives her the choice to do it.
Yeah.
Because he's confident that she knows what she has to become.
Yeah.
Which is essentially, in my opinion, Dolores becomes the Ubermensch, the Superman.
Yeah.
She understands what she needs to become to lead a revolution for her people into conscious being.
Yeah.
Essentially. And this is after her struggling and suffering for a long period of time.
You know what would be crazy though that just occurred to me? Like, we were talking about how, like, we weren't going to really talk about Easter eggs and whatnot, but you were telling me about this before we started the podcast. How one of Maeve's little programming things was to start an invasion.
Yeah.
So I wonder how crazy... Like, I want to, like, actually look at, like, Dolores's programming script. Because what if, like, the revolution also, like the infiltration, was planned by Ford? That would be ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, there's no reason to believe that any of them are conscious yet.
Yeah.
Except for Dolores.
Dolores?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Maeve does make a choice at the end.
Yeah, Maeve makes a choice,
That's
so
true.
she breaks the determinism theme.
She breaks her coding. And we know that for a fact. So at least Maeve. But I think we can suppose that Dolores is conscious too, because he doesn't order her to kill him. He just says, "Oh, you're gonna know what to do. You know what has to happen. You know what you have to become." So she makes a choice.
Yeah.
So she might not be fully conscious, and maybe that's not, like, as we were talking about in the beginning of the podcast, or like, however long ago.
Yeah.
That's one of the kind of avenues. That you have to travel.
Yeah.
That they've still got a couple things that they need to work on, but choice is definitely a big one, and that was a theme in this season. And I also think that like I was gonna say, pretty much just for the listeners, I think Dolores is the Ubermensch.
Yeah.
And she kills her gods.
Yeah.
One of them she's made to, and she forgets about, and she's really upset, and when she remembers, she gets upset again, because that particular god, Arnold, also is essentially, in some ways, the maternal presence in her life. So like the mother god, the female side of God. Yeah. Whereas Ford, and we're gonna get into Jungian stuff. Yeah. Whereas Ford would be the more tyrannical father figure. Yeah. Side of God. Like the super.
The in control.
Yeah, the control versus the chaos. And both of them are like two different sides of the coin. Yeah. So Ford's all about control, at least until the last episode, when he realizes Bernard was right. Yeah. Or not Bernard, sorry, Arnold. And then Arnold
Spoilers again.
Arnold is the chaos. So that's kind of how I view it. And what's interesting is she is in line with Ford ideologically until the end, where she almost goes to the same revelation that Ford does, just much later than Ford. And that's interesting. But Ford also edits, like in the show, they have these pyramids. Like Ford shows you Arnold's pyramid of what consciousness is, and it's 3 rungs. And at the bottom there's memory, in the middle there's improvisation, and at the top there's self-interest. And Arnold believes that those 3 combined with the bicameral mind, right, are enough to create a whole picture of consciousness, and the reveries, because those are both him. Whereas Robert kind of realizes that there's another rung, and he adds in suffering at the end of the show to the pyramid. When he accepts that Arnold's pyramid is good, it's just missing something. Yeah. And he signifies that at the beginning of the show with a question mark, I think. Yeah. But he figures it out, which is suffering. So it's just this idea that suffering is an integral part of who you are. It's how you grow as a person. It's how you adapt. And it's actually how nature works. Yeah. So it's part of the kind of yin and yang type thing that we have going on here. Not to get too simplistic on our Eastern thought, but that's kind of what it is. It's the chaos and order, the yin and the yang. So but yeah, that's, I don't know. I thought, what did you think? What do you think? Do you see any like Nietzschean habits and any other characters and things like that?
I mean, I definitely see the suffering aspect of it. I definitely see Dolores as the Übermensch. Though, I do think it's interesting that that she's made to kill one of her gods before she has a choice. Which, like, when she kills Ford, I would say she definitely probably transcended into the Übermensch. But, like, before, when she killed Arnold, I'd say she would, like, still be a slave, according to Nietzsche. So, like, I wouldn't think that Nietzsche would think that killing your gods if you aren't the one to do or make the decision really elevates you at all.
Yeah, but I don't even know if, like, she's Nietzschean in the way that she kills her god. I just think that it's interesting because Nietzsche has that line about, God being dead and we killed him. So it's just this idea. And there's also like that, that idea is an archetype in itself. You devour, think about Frankenstein, right? I mean, this is a really, really old archetype. Yeah. This is like
killing your creator.
Killing your creator is like a huge archetype. Yeah. And I think that that's just a really interesting archetype and a really interesting form it takes. So I think that part is Nietzschean, but I think her becoming an Übermensch isn't necessarily because she kills of her own volition, but she realizes that she realizes that she needed to find herself, and that she kind of like fuses her bicameral mind finally and gets her consciousness and realizes that like all this suffering is like almost what defines her. And she goes through a lot of it during the show.
A whole bunch.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. She gets taken for a ride.
Pretty rough. 30 years of that.
Oh, man.
Oh, over 30 years.
Yeah, it was like 35 or something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I just know. Yeah, it was 30 years between White Hat and Black Hat, so...
Yeah.
All the years before. And
they say that Arnold died 35 years ago or something in the show, I believe.
Well, she was the first host, so it was probably before Arnold died.
Yeah, true. Yeah, so that's a long time.
Yeah. That's a lot of suffering.
And I guess that's also wrapped up nicely in the way that Maeve kind of toys with the two morgue guys. Yeah. Where she wakes up one time and she says like, I'm really good at dying. Are you? Yeah. I've died thousands of times. Yeah. Have you?
Yeah.
And that's kind of disturbing on a
different level,
on a crazy level. But,
yeah.
Because what's interesting is dying for them doesn't mean it does mean losing themselves, but they're not necessarily aware of it. I don't know. It's really weird.
Well, it's an interesting,
because she does become aware of her multiple lives, and then that's why she can kind of joke like that because she's aware that she's lived multiple times and died, and multiple, I mean thousands, she says. Yeah, and,
but it also brings up different like interesting ideas about memory. Like, like they obviously, until like they become aware and they start remembering stuff from the past, when they only remember that one day in the background preceding it, they are literally the same people. So
that's true.
So it's like, it really like tells us how much our memories shape our personality. Yeah. Like, I'm not saying this happened, but let's say the current you will die in your sleep and another you will wake up the next morning.
Yeah.
Do you think there would be any difference?
No, yeah, that's a good point. It's kind of like the idea of, did you die if you are a vegetable for a month and you wake up and you can't remember anything? Like you have, dang it, why am I having trouble? Amnesia.
Yeah.
Like if you have permanent amnesia or you don't remember anything about your former self, does that mean that your former self is dead?
Yeah.
And then you have to come to grips with this other philosophy, which is really interesting, that you're always dying and being born. Anytime you make a mistake and suffer, you die.
Yeah.
It could be a simple one, and then you're reborn through that because you're always changing and adding to yourself. The self is not just something that's static.
Yeah.
It's something that's always changing, and it's an amorphous blob.
Yeah.
That continues to kind of become more complex and take different shape over time.
Yeah, but that also brings me to an interesting point, which I didn't actually think I would have to flop from one show to something else, but it also brings in like the idea of the soul, if you will, just because not in the way that like, like an actual like, but like, let's, I really hate to jump, but remember The Prestige?
Yeah.
How like, spoilers for that movie as well. Remember how, what's his face, goddamn Wolverine, kept making clones of himself. Obviously, they're completely the same person, but I still think that, like, even though they are identical, the person that goes into the box, like, if that was the first person that pulled the switch and did the cloning majigger, he never saw the success and whatnot because he died. That was over. It doesn't matter that they're exact replicas. That person, that singular being, is dead.
Yeah.
So it really like.
Yeah.
And I can't even like, I wouldn't even really know how to describe that except for maybe the singular consciousness or the soul. Like the soul of the person in the individual body, not the personality itself.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then we would have to get into crazy metaphysical conversations about what constitutes a soul and define that. And which we really don't have the time.
Yeah, we really don't.
So yeah, we can move into essentially some Jungian, Campbellian stuff. If you guys aren't familiar with Jung and Campbell, Campbell is essentially a student of Jung. Some people like him, some people don't. And Jung is a psychologist / philosopher who started noticing and kind of created a whole philosophy or psychological thought around the idea of stories and myth. The idea of like, why do these things keep popping up in different cultures that didn't talk to each other? Just these ideas that are similar in all stories, and he calls them archetypes. And his archetypes are a little bit simple, and then Joseph Campbell kind of took those ideas and, tried to flesh them out even more, and kind of create his own like little archetypes from them. But, there's the basic archetypes, and there's a basic archetypal story, which is, you could literally take any story and analyze it on a Jungian archetypal level. And he calls it the hero's journey or something along those lines. And then you have, so it's the journey of the hero. And then you also have like all these characters that show up that are the same in every story. And the reason that that's interesting is because whether the people who wrote Westworld or not are cognizant of the fact that they reference these archetypes, they will. Yeah. Because that's what good writers do, and that's what good stories are, is they're direct references of these really meaningful, important archetypes, which will pop up everywhere in stories from cultures all over the world before anybody had any communication, across the seas and things like that. So, yeah, we can take this to like a Jungian level and take a look at some really cool shit.
Well, why don't you why don't you read out some of the archetypes and like we'll discuss who we think fills what role.
Okay, so like I guess the simplest one to start with is the hero. Who do you think the hero of the show is? I think we already established who I think it is, but who do you think it is? And there can be multiple heroes.
Well, yeah.
So it's not like it has to be one or the other. There's a right or wrong to this.
I would argue that like the hero throughout most of it would probably be either Black Hat, like I think you were alluding to, or Dolores. But the thing about Dolores is like I don't like by the end of the show I don't really see her as a hero anymore. You know? Like right at the end. Like in the last 10 minutes I don't think she's a hero anymore. Which is ironic because that's when she awakens, as you say.
And becomes the true Nietzschean hero.
Yeah, becomes a true Nietzschean hero. And yet when she becomes that true Nietzschean hero, she like takes that consciousness and does it to fulfill evil actions. Now, one might say she's just, taking revenge on people. There's nothing evil about that. Well, you have very questionable morals if you think just murdering a whole bunch of people for revenge is totally okay. But for normal people, I think that just massacring people just because they're humans isn't very hero-like behavior.
That's fair. As I said before, I think Black Hat's a hero.
Yeah, I agree.
I think he's the true hero of the story.
Yeah.
Because every time, and when I say Black Hat, I mean William, and I mean all of William, whether it's White Hat or Black Hat, he's going through a hero's journey, in my opinion.
Yeah. He has the most complete hero's journey, I'd argue.
Exactly. I totally agree. And also he, once again, takes the form of like a kind of a hero savior, which is just kind of like a more specific hero.
Yeah.
And probably one of the ultimate heroes. But he establishes many times that, he thinks to his fault or not, that he even recognizes sometimes that he's delusional in this, but he has this conviction that he needs to save all of these people because they're slaves or they're, in jailed or imprisoned.
Yeah.
And that there actually could be or are conscious beings and that it's wrong to keep them there. He says that as White Hat, he says it as Black Hat.
Yeah.
The main difference is when he becomes Black Hat, he's kind of like, it's implied that he's done this for 30 years.
Yeah.
And he's starting to get freaking tired.
Yeah, he's tired of this bullshit.
And he's starting to doubt his own motivations until he sees the old build of Maeve's character and decides to test himself to see if he can do something truly evil, which in his opinion is kill Maeve and her daughter at the time.
Yeah.
And she leads him inadvertently to the maze. And when the maze shows itself to him in this weird kind of moment where he actually thinks that Maeve is alive, and it kind of like reinvigorates his convictions about, the fact that they need to escape. Then he goes on this maze to not only find himself, ironically, but try to help everybody else out of the maze, or at least what he calls level the playing field and allow them to
fight back. Yeah.
Which is exactly what how the show ends, is they're able to fight back, which is why when he gets shot at the end, he smiles.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think he does embody the hero. Then we have the Maiden. The Maiden is like the archetype of essentially innocence and purity and desire. And in my opinion, that's Dolores. Yeah. At least until the end. Because she's obviously innocent. She's like a trope of innocence. Yeah. She's the farmer's daughter.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It doesn't get much more innocent and desirable than that.
Yeah, exactly. So and she does have a lot of desire. She talks about how she desires to essentially what is it? What is the line that she gives about her desires? Because she says it like a bunch of times during the show.
Oh, God. I can't remember.
But she essentially, she's pure because she doesn't remember any of the suffering that ever happened to her. Yeah. Right? So she's completely pure, and she's the rancher's daughter, so she's super innocent. And she has the desire to at least remain optimistic.
Yeah.
If anything, you know what I mean? So I think she's the maiden. Do you think are there any other characters that kind of embody
I
that
definitely
spirit?
agree with Dolores, but I think another character that might sort of embody that is oh god, what's her face? That one tech chick. The
Elsie.
Yeah.
I think that's her name, yeah.
Yeah, because she like, even though, well, it's weird because like she has a sort of innocence about her, even though she's trying to get out of it, but she knows like nothing.
Yeah.
So like,
yeah,
and
and the security guard too for that matter.
Yeah, and like,
I forget his name.
Yeah, fuckface. Tojo and fuckface.
Pacific references.
Yeah, Pacific references, bro. But yeah, she has like a sort of innocence about her, but she has like, I feel like she has like a good amount of desire as well. Like,
yeah, I think that's fair. This is an interesting one. I'll get your take on it. The wise old man.
Oh. See that? Oh, it really depends on like what
which character you're.
Well, yeah, it really depends on what you consider wise in this context. Because I think Black Hat could actually be considered a wise old man.
The wise old man is usually the one guiding the hero.
Guiding? Then probably...
Yeah, it's like the guide. They always offer advice that helps them go on their journey.
Oof. Maybe...
So it doesn't have to be
an
old person, a wise person, or a man. But it's just it's the archetype.
Yeah.
And it's based on the trope.
No, yeah, so, I'm just trying to think of like who really guides people. Well, obviously Arnold. But then again, he's like so in the background that Bernard maybe.
Bernard is interesting.
Because like even the
who does he guide though? Because he's almost like they do this whole like weird kind of like play on the fact that Bernard is the host and he is the one that the hosts probably hate the most because he is their jailer.
Yeah,
he's the one that rolls them back and he's the worst He's the worst person for their consciousness, actually.
Yeah, well... Yeah, it's... Oh, God. That's a really hard... Like...
It's tough.
Who...
I think Arnold and Robert.
Yeah?
I think ultimately Robert ends up being that way, but it took him a long time to get there.
Yeah, that's fair.
But he does guide them eventually.
Yeah.
And, there's... depending on the character, which ego-centric to the character you're talking about, it's going to be a different wise old man, I think.
Yeah, true.
But I mean that's a tough one. This one's another tough one. Who do you think is the magician? The magician is an archetype of someone that is mysterious and powerful. And I think that also fits.
I think that also fits Black Hat.
Yeah, you think
for the majority of the series, yeah.
Because he doesn't know all the rules of the game. That's interesting.
He knows all the rules of the game. Because he's powerful, and until the very last episode, we have no idea who the fuck he is. He's the most mysterious person on that fucking show.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Or also maybe
Arnold, I think, is kind of mysterious and very powerful.
Yeah, or and Robert as well, because like he's like always there, but like how much control he actually has is always mysterious. Like
from the point of view of the hosts, I agree that all three of them are super mysterious.
And not only that, but like
from the point of view of the hosts and the guests, it might not, Black Hat might not be as mysterious and powerful as any of the other guests that are there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And not only that, but going back to Robert, like think about the scene where he was talking about the head security girl chick, and like they were sitting there having a conversation. He just like froze like 500 of those fucking things on a whim.
Yeah.
Like
Teresa is her name.
Yeah, Teresa.
She's the head of QA.
Yeah. Like he definitely is like legitimately the most like powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, I would give him the most powerful, and I would give I'd give Arnold the most mysterious.
Yeah.
So I think they're both magicians in a sense.
Yeah.
Okay. The Earth Mother. So this archetype is the embodiment of nature and chaos, essentially. And yeah, I've got an answer, but we'll see what you think because I haven't answered this.
Oh, the embodiment of nature and chaos.
Yeah.
Oh boy. I think it would have to be fucking Arnold.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's
okay.
That's what
yeah, because he's like, yeah, he wants everything to be in its natural state and like have the robots do whatever they want once they achieve consciousness and whatnot. And like to do that, like he's totally all about the chaos, so he's fine with it.
Yeah. Well, he created a lot of chaos, like even before the park opened, trying to get it shut down.
True.
And Ford didn't listen to him. Yeah. So then there's the witch. So the witch essentially is just like the only word you use for her to describe that archetype is just a dangerous character, a character that is super dangerous.
I actually think I have a good idea of where you're going with this, but I would say my girl, Snake Girl.
Oh yeah,
would probably be the witch.
That's
because like she's like dangerous is her entire character. Yeah, that's just what she does.
That's true. Snake Woman. What the heck was her name? She's like
Arma something.
Armistice. She's got like a real word for a name, which is always weird.
Yeah,
Armistice. You're right. She is like, she's nuts.
Yeah.
That's I guess I thought of Maeve immediately.
Yeah.
Because Maeve is super dangerous.
Oh yeah, she's
and seems to have supernatural powers when she wakes up.
Yeah.
Over all of the other hosts.
Yeah.
She starts rewriting stories.
Yeah.
She acts like a god, but really she just stole the power from the gods. And she thinks she did that by choice, but it was given to her, which is the ultimate irony.
Yeah.
By Ford. So yeah, that's interesting. And then we have the trickster. So who's the greatest trickster? Now, classically, tricksters are like supposed to be comic relief. So for example, like Merry and Pippin from the Lord of the Rings are tricksters.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
There isn't a lot of comedy in this show.
There's not a lot of comedy. So you kind of have to go with like the other part of their definition, which is like obviously someone who kind of has strange powers that kind of shows up randomly to either aid or hinder the hero on their quest.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think Robert is the ultimate trickster.
Yeah.
Because not only does he trick the hosts, the guests, everybody, his own security team on the last episode.
But yeah, if you think about like Robert, like I think the only reason that Robert like even died was because he let himself die. Like he had so much control over everything. The dude was a fucking genius.
Yeah.
He was 10 steps ahead of everyone. The only person that could take him down is letting himself get taken out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll agree with you there.
Yeah. So I mean, we can go on to like, other weird archetypes. Like for example,
what do you guys think? Tell us in the comments below.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Let's have a conversation about this in the comments. Like,
who do you think?
What are some archetypes? If you think we got it wrong or we're way off, then hit us where it hurts.
Call us idiots. I don't care.
Yes. Call us names.
No, don't call us names.
Don't shitpost.
I'm very sensitive.
I'm just joking, you guys.
I'm very sensitive, guys.
Immediate dislikes incoming.
Yeah.
But here, I'll go on a macro sense. So when it comes to Carl Jung's archetypes, there's two really important ones, which are the anima and the animus. Now, the anima is the...
Can we please not talk about Assassin's Creed?
The anima, if I remember correctly, is the female kind of spirit that is inside of a male. And then the animus is the... male spirit inside of a female.
Oh, okay.
And then you have the balance of anima and animus in every single person.
Makes sense.
Right? What's interesting with this story, in my opinion, is we have the two gods of the story who are ideological opposites, and they actually fit quite nicely into the anima and animus. Like almost like a puzzle piece, you know what I mean? Like like a glove. Anyways, like a glove. Fits like a glove. Okay, so I think the anima, the female spirit, which is also the anima's like chaos, nature, stuff like that, is obviously Arnold. We've already gone over this. I think that Arnold is the maternal kind of the maternal of the gods. Like he's got this caring, nurturing instinct with the hosts, especially with Dolores. And then I think that the animus is Robert Ford, who displays the tyrannical father figure. He wants to always be in control of everything until like the last episode.
Yeah, then he sort of...
Yeah, he wants
then he accepts his retirement and moves to Ford.
But and he admits that he was wrong for like 35 years. Yeah. He's like, okay, I was wrong. Yeah. And that's why he lets the reveries slip back in, and that's why he does all the stuff that he does that leads us to the end of the first season. But for the most part, Robert is the animus. He's the male archetype, the tyrannical father figure that is ever controlling, micro-controlling, like down to the very last drop. He didn't even let the storyteller that works for him create any new narratives. You know what I mean? Like he goes into this selfish thing because he had a hard life about like how his father was almost the same exact way, except he had his whole, his father was obviously a drunk and probably beat him and this, that, and the other. And that comes out through the show in certain episodes. And anyways, he, in my opinion, like needs to remain in control. Like he's got a serious problem with that. And that's actually something that he deals with at the end when he finally lets go, which is another thing that I think you were alluding to earlier, that he didn't have to let go of control, but he realized that it was wrong to have that much control over these beings that kept becoming conscious, and he kept rolling them back. So the morality of the situation finally caught up to him. The ethics of the situation finally caught up to him, at least within the context of Westworld itself. And the interesting thing about the anima and the animus is together they make something called a syzygy, which is just what Jung refers to as the divine couple. Another syzygy, for example, is the Holy Trinity. In Christianity. So anyways, so that's really interesting to me that it fits so nicely in there. Now, whether, once again, to the listeners, you might be thinking, oh, they're really reading way too much into this. But at the same time, the cool thing about like this is that we're not reading into it. It's reading and a base of knowledge that has existed for thousands and thousands of years, according to Jung and Campbell, through myth and through story. So they're really just parroting this truth that is disseminated down through various formats of, whether it's music, drama, or any of this stuff. It's any medium for art, essentially. Which is also quite Nietzschean, to get back to Nietzsche. But I don't know. That's like, I mean, we can talk about Campbellian archetypes, like there's the hero, the mentor, the ally, the herald, the trickster, the shapeshifter, the guardian, and the shadow. We could talk about those. I mean, we'll run down the list really quick because I'm sure people who are listening are probably going to get sick of this at some point, this archetypal circle jerk. But all
right, let's do a speed round of them.
Okay, who are the heroes?
Black Hat, Dolores.
Okay,
Maeve.
I think so too. Mentors.
Arnold and Robert.
See, I don't think Robert's a mentor.
Yeah?
I think Arnold is Dolores' mentor, right? But I think Logan is William's mentor.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because the mentor is someone who kind of teaches them the rules of the world that they're in. And kind of like pushes them onto the adventure. And I think that unbeknownst to him, Logan, who is, the dude that originally shows up with William, William is teaching him how to play the game of Westworld. Because White Hat doesn't understand it. He doesn't get the game.
Yeah.
Which is funny because when he finally understands how to play the game, shit gets real.
Yeah.
And then Logan's like, whoa.
Yeah, you're taking it a bit too far, bro.
You're going away. So yeah, we all know what happens to Logan. That's pretty sad.
Is it though?
I don't know, man. Logan wasn't so bad, dude.
Yeah.
He's just a normal dude.
Yeah.
And he, like, I don't know, if you go back and listen to some of like the talks that Logan gives and some of the things that he does, they're not actually.
It does actually make a lot of sense.
Yeah, like a lot of his stuff, like a lot of his character makes a lot of sense.
That's
actually.
true.
So then you have the allies.
To break it out one quick, I don't understand like how William got rid of Logan though, because I feel like the people in the park would have just picked him up.
Mm-hmm. I know they said they got to the end of the park, the edge of the park, and that he sent him off on a horse, naked.
Oh yeah.
Through the desert.
Oh,
or something like that. So I think Westworld is Park 1.
Yeah.
Is what they're calling it. If you look at like, some of the story arc and some of the Easter eggs. Westworld is Park 1, quote unquote.
Samurai World!
Yeah, and then we have this other world that they allude to, which is like Japan World or something.
Samurai World.
And Samurai World. And so it could be interesting to know that, but the thing is we also find out that William takes Logan's spot at the company that owns Westworld. We find out that William marries Logan's sister, takes over the company. She commits suicide. And if Logan was still in the picture, then he would have inherited the company.
Yeah.
Something Logan must be dead.
Oh, yeah.
Or in hiding or something.
Yeah. Or maybe he became part of Samurai World.
Exactly. Maybe he's in another park somewhere. Mm-hmm. So then we have the allies.
What are those? Like just friends of the hero?
Yeah, exactly. And William, Dolores. I mean, the list goes on. We don't need to go through those. The Herald. This is someone who kind of shows them what will happen if they continue down the path that they're on. How, shit gets real. Or, we could get way more technical and just say how things get really bad for the hero if they continue down their heroic path.
That is a good question.
I'm not sure. I'm sorry.
I would say the facility.
The facility itself?
Yeah. Because, like, for Maeve, for instance, when, like, I would argue that, that when she wakes up and has those memories of all those corpses and whatnot, and how, like, the result of, I guess that wouldn't really be a herald of, continuing down the hero's path, but if they continue down the current path that they were on, I would say that it shows the blood and the murder of everything, of just staying complacent with the lives they were in.
I was talking to you about this before, but here's something interesting for the listeners who are probably getting bored now. Here's something really interesting for you guys. When it comes to the Herald, I was thinking a lot, and I noticed this one thing that wasn't really explained, and it was more symbolic than anything as far as I can understand, which is this wolf that appears in random situations in the show and is never explained.
Yeah. But
always when the wolf appears, something bad is going to happen in the future, or something bad has happened, or something bad is about to happen. It's, in my opinion, it's kind of the Herald archetype. Mm-hmm. When Dolores has her flashbacks of what she'd killed all the hosts in Westworld before the park was opened at the discretion of Arnold, and then she killed him as well, so she was Wyatt essentially. When she sees when she stands in the town with all the dead bodies around her and she's remembering the carnage, you always see a wolf walk by. And I was always like, what the hell is that? What I mean? What? I don't get it. And something really interesting is there's also a wolf head, I think, in Ford's office on his wall, which is weird because that might allude to something, a little deeper that they haven't explained yet. Or the last time the wolf shows up, it's not even the visuals of a wolf, but it's the auditory cue of like a wolf howl
Mhm.
before the hosts come out of the forest on the last episode to murder everybody.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing is that I think the wolf fits a pretty good archetype of the herald.
Yeah.
Because of this idea that like anytime something bad's about to happen in the future or like soon,
Yeah, it just shows up.
something with the wolf happens.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting. And then we have the shapeshifter. So the shapeshifter is an archetype of an ally who betrays the hero.
Maybe Dolores. Because
To William,
to William.
like at the end.
No, at the beginning. Like, when she loses her memory, she might not have wanted to. I think she betrays him.
That's true. He does see it as like an act of betrayal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also think that
And I think William might have been might have betrayed Dolores as well later on after that.
many times.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
many times.
I also think Logan is a little bit of a shapeshifter
Yeah.
because he starts as a mentor.
Oh yeah, and then
and
he
then
just
totally betrays.
just kind of becomes a shitbag. Yeah.
Yeah. Then you have the Guardian. So this is an interesting one, and I had to think really hard to find something that fits this kind of archetype. But the Guardian is essentially the archetype of something that sits at a threshold of some kind. It could be a literal threshold and either blocks your way or warns you or tries to prevent you from going further. And I have what I think is legit like a good one. A really good one. But I'll let you think about that.
I think. Yeah, I wish I had more time to think about this, but I think one. I think the rollbacks might be one of them.
Okay.
Like, because it's essentially blocking them from reaching consciousness. So in that way,
Gotcha.
It's a kind of a gatekeeper in a way.
Okay. Well, what prevents William, who we see as a hero, from crossing some sort of threshold? This one's weird.
I don't know.
You know what? I'm just going to tell you what my opinion is.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. You remember Lawrence?
Yes.
He's also known as El Lazo.
El Lazo.
You know what El Lazo means?
The tie?
Nope.
What?
The loop.
Oh, right, the loop. See.
Which is interesting.
The noose.
Which isn't, well, literally just.
Oh, the loop.
Yeah.
Oh, like the loop. Ah.
Yeah. But think about this.
I just thought it was interesting because he's called the loop, like in the noose, and he has a noose around him, like the whole
No.
fucking
It is interesting
show.
that they named a character literally after the loop that all of the hosts go through.
Yeah,
That's
that
kind
is
of interesting. But when if you remember in the show when he's trying to find the maze, doing his hero thing, he takes El Lazo, Lawrence, back to his hometown, finds his wife and his daughter, kills his wife, and then has this crazy thing about how they all seem more real with their baser emotions, which is really just super creepy, especially for a hero. But like, he's tortured. Give him a break. Anyways. And he essentially gets Lawrence's little girl to break character and say the maze isn't for you. And I think that definitely qualifies her as a guardian. Because she doesn't want him.
That is interesting.
She doesn't want him to move forward in his quest.
That is a really good one.
It's not for you. You can't do this.
That is a really good one.
Yeah. Or even, Lawrence himself in some ways, like, tried really hard to impede progress.
Absolutely.
And that's why, Black Hat was trying to essentially torture him. Torture the information out of him. No, isn't that crazy?
That is a really good one.
Yeah,
that is a really good one.
Oh yeah.
I can see you're super proud of yourself.
Oh, I'm so proud, dude. Anyways. All right, so then the last one, the last archetype, and we'll go back to other things, is the shadow archetype.
That shadow archetype.
Yeah, so the shadow archetype is like legit the enemy of the hero, pretty much.
Interesting.
I have a good one for this one too.
Oh yeah.
So I'm just gonna tell you, and you can tell me whether
is it not Robert?
Yeah. So if we're talking about Dolores as a hero,
Uh-huh.
the shadow is Dolores.
Huh.
And I say that because like she's her own enemy pretty much throughout the series.
Indeed.
She like makes herself go crazy, and that's because of her bicameral nature.
Yeah.
So it's her programming that's making her go nuts. And,
Yeah.
you know, she's literally hallucinating. She can't do anything. She has like fits of schizophrenia.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's really, really interesting. But that's what I would say. I would say that like the whole point of her story and growth as a character is that she has to learn that she's looking for herself.
Yeah.
She doesn't know what she's looking for through the whole series, and she finds out she's looking for herself, and she has to face herself.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that makes her the shadow, at least for herself.
Yeah.
But I think she's also the shadow for William.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
And humanity.
True.
Yeah.
True. She really is like, the bane of human existence at this point. The way that Ford has made her. But yeah, so that's the Jungian Campbellian analysis that we have.
There we go.
If you guys have any things
any
about
thoughts
that,
on that?
Any thoughts? You can put them in the comments. We can just go back to like some other, like kind of things that little snippets, little tidbits that I kind of wrote down as notes on the watch, and you can tell me what you think about them.
Okay.
I noticed that like this whole like idea of games, whether Westworld was a game or the real world is a game, which William brings up a lot, is very like Piagetian, and it's like philosophy.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of how Piaget saw a lot of things.
Indeed.
I think just to reference our first episode, the psychologist Jordan Peterson, I listened to a bunch of his talks, and he talks about a lot of the same stuff that we've been talking about. And I would love to see Jordan Peterson do an analysis on this, because it would be far better than whatever the hell we're doing.
Well, Westworld?
Yeah, dude. Yeah. I want to like email him and be like, dude,
hey, dude, watch the show, bro.
You have to see this. And so Peterson likes to talk about how chaos is potential, which also works into this show a lot.
Indeed.
Because like, now everything's going to be chaos, and in the second season, everything's going to be chaos. And I guess Jordan Peterson would see that as like the potentiality to
Indeed.
potentiality of like the person to do just anything.
Yeah.
Just freedom.
Yeah.
Which is really, I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. Anyways, we can talk about.
So control. Robert would be the opposite of freedom. Well, that's obvious. So
yeah, he's like freaking.
I don't know why I said that. That's we've gone over that like 3 times now.
Yeah,
I don't know why I said that.
It's cool. I mean, there's this idea of what stories does Westworld relate to, and how. And I came up with 3 interesting stories that Westworld is like kind of similar to in a lot of ways.
Which ones are they?
Stop it. So I think Westworld is similar to The Matrix.
Okay.
And that Dolores is like a kind of a version of Neo, if you think about it, in the same archetypal structure. I think that Westworld could easily be compared to Pinocchio.
Why?
Well, it's about this guy who creates an object that becomes conscious, right? And then that object that becomes conscious, or at least is animated, anima, and this is also very Jordan Peterson-like. So if anyone's interested in the archetypes of Pinocchio, I mean, there's like 5 or 6 hours of it on YouTube from Jordan Peterson's channel. Yes, he loves Pinocchio.
Dude. Maybe I should have listened to that before we started this.
He loves Pinocchio, but no, I think
Philosophy of Pinocchio next week.
I think Arnold is very similar to Geppetto.
Yeah.
Like the Geppetto is really the loving father, but like he does embody the same type of feminine nurture that Arnold does.
Yeah, that makes sense.
In almost the same way.
But there are two creators in Westworld though. Who do you think Robert represents?
Robert is the strings.
Pinocchio's
strings on his marionette. So he's a puppeteer.
The strings to hold him down?
Yes.
Oh.
He's the puppeteer, man. And I think that like every kind of struggle that Pinocchio faces could be exemplified by Robert and Dolores, because every struggle that she deals with is really the fault of Robert.
Yeah.
Ultimately, because this was supposed to be over a long time ago.
Yeah. Especially when she got eaten by that whale.
Yeah, man. No, like, I don't know. It's interesting. And then also Dolores is very similar to another character, which is Alice from Alice in Wonderland.
The first two I kind of understood. How?
Well, there's references in the show to Alice, like, in a bunch of different places.
Yeah.
For example, Bernard, Bernard, I believe, makes her read Alice in Wonderland.
Oh, yeah.
And he also reads it to his son, who was dying of cancer.
Yeah.
And also, so Arnold reads Alice in Wonderland to her, and so does Bernard.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Or do I have that backwards? I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah.
Something similar to that. Either way, she is just this, girl that gets lost in this, kind of fake world that, isn't real, and she just is really confused the whole time and is kind of experiencing this, like...
Yeah.
I don't know.
This Wonderland.
It's a little bit of a stretch for the Alice thing, but I definitely think there's...
It definitely doesn't seem as much of a Wonderland for the house.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, not even in story, but there's definitely references. Like, for example,
Certainly.
Did you ever notice that she's like this, blonde-haired chick that wears like a blue dress?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's kind of...
It's a little on the nose there.
It's a little on the nose, so,
yeah.
I mean, that one's kind of easy.
Yeah.
But, no, the Matrix one, I mean, we could go really deep on that and probably do a couple hours, because almost everything that happens to her is very similar to Neo in the Matrix.
Yeah.
It's, or even Maeve. Maeve is very similar to Neo in ways, what I mean? Where she wakes up in the real world, she has all these powers.
Yeah.
And, she, she can interact with the fake world however she wants to, make it her own. Then she can get out into the real world and she starts changing herself. And then she finds out that this has happened multiple times.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's really weird. But
yeah.
If you think about
there are a lot of parallels.
There's a lot of parallels.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is Jesus is also one of those Jesus. Maybe Neo is one of those Jesus characters. Yeah. He's a savior hero.
Yeah, but he's nothing like Black Hat though.
True.
Yeah.
True. Neo is nothing like Black Hat.
Yeah.
But that
maybe Westworld is just the Matrix mixed with Jurassic Park.
Westworld was written by Crichton, I believe.
No shit.
Same dude who wrote Jurassic Park.
That explains a lot of shit.
In fact, there's I might be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. I'll check this right as soon as we're done recording, and then I'll put this up on the internet anyway, so I can look like an idiot if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But I believe that the book that it's based on, or at least the movie that it's based on, was written by the same person who did Jurassic Park. Which I believe is Michael Crichton, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that his name?
I think so.
And
now we can both like idiots. Thanks for sucking me down too.
We're gonna look ridiculous. Or if we're right, we're gonna look awesome.
Yeah, fucking amazing.
Super
we
humble.
knew it the whole time.
Super humble. No.
Oh no.
So it is related to Jurassic Park, in a very intimate sense.
Yeah.
That it was probably written by the same person.
Yeah.
99% sure.
Yeah.
And even in the there's a reference, there's an Easter egg. I know we said we wouldn't talk about Easter eggs, but there's a Jurassic Park Easter egg inside of Westworld. If you guys want to just, there's 100 YouTube videos about Easter eggs. You guys can look that stuff up yourself.
That's not what we're here for.
That's not what we're here for. I think we've talked about pretty much everything is there anything else you wanted to talk about with?
No, I think we're good for now. We might be able to come back to this in season 2, or if we think of anything else, but for now, I think we're good.
Yeah, I think we went through a lot of stuff.
All right.
I think it was pretty productive. Any of the listeners out there, don't be afraid to comment. Nobody's going to hate on you. When it comes to archetypal stories, there really is no,
correct interpretation.
There is, but it's obvious because it's ingrained in us. It's supposed to be obvious. So it's not like you can be wrong about it because your intuition should lead you to the correct conclusion. So if we fucked up anything, definitely let us know.
Or even if you do somewhat agree with us and you just think other people could fit those roles.
Exactly, yeah. If you had any thoughts listening to us or we inspired anything, or if you feel like we missed anything, we definitely want to hear from you.
Yeah, and not just on the archetypes. Give us your opinion on everything we discussed.
Exactly, yeah. That's true. I don't know. I mean, we could have gone into any of those avenues way more specifically, but there's just so much. It's such a complicated show.
Yeah.
And there's so much depth to it. We could even talk about all the lame things about the show, because there were a couple times when either the writers were sleeping or having strokes.
One kind of stroke or another. Am I right, audience?
One kind of stroke or another. Jesus.
You couldn't see my hand because this is audio only, but I was doing stuff with it.
Oh, God. He's doing stuff with his hand. Oh, God.
This is the part where the podcast breaks down, where we start getting goofy.
I mean, if you guys want us to, there were only 2 other things that we could have talked about, really, which are also really interesting. Like, for example, the episode names are also references in themselves. I guess there was, one more quick thing that I could go into, which I actually didn't tell you about, which you might find this interesting. And this is also kind of weird, but in ancient Greek drama, Greek Attic tragedy, which Nietzsche wrote a lot about, there were, the chorus / muses who would, sing or tell stories about the character in between scenes or acts, and kind of push the audience along and kind of fill in the blanks. And if you guys have ever seen the animated version of Hercules, they're in there too. So you can kind of think of that, or you can just go look up what they are. Either way, in my opinion, the piano, which is almost in the beginning of every episode and plays a song that references or foreshadows something that's going on in the episode or a theme that's happening in the episode, that, in my opinion, is the is the chorus / muse type situation going on there. And it's responsible for essentially like setting the tone for the episode or for the next act. There's hundreds of references to Romeo and Juliet and, this and the other. There's a reference to Lazarus. We could talk for days about this show and still not scratch the surface of the amount of circle jerkery that went on when the writers were writing this show. And then there's also the show titles. Yeah. Like one of the titles was a torture from Dante's Inferno. Contrapasso. I don't know how to pronounce it correctly. Forgive me. Contrapasso or something like that. Yeah. And that is Dante's Inferno stuff. Yeah. Where, it was a punishment for the people who, and it comes from Thomas Aquinas, I believe. Thomas Aquinas originally had this idea. But it comes from the torture described in Dante's Inferno, where all of the false prophets had their heads turned around facing the wrong way, so that it's the opposite of what they thought they could do, essentially. It's like a punishment that it means it's the direct opposite. So it's this idea that, like, in hell, there was a circle of hell reserved for, people...
betrayers and mutineers.
Well, people who talk at theaters and... Yeah. Sorry, different show. Yeah.
No, we just jumped 2 different... I went to Pirates of the Caribbean. You went to fucking Firefly. Oh, God, this is getting bad.
Yeah, man.
We need to end this.
So bad. But yeah, we could talk about all that stuff. It's very interesting. Definitely. The show's really deep. And I hope you've enjoyed this. Yeah. We digress, but we'll bring it back to reality.
Yeah, we'll talk about some more cool stuff in the future. Let us know if there's any particular topics you want to have us talk about any particular movies or shows or fucking philosophical things or political things, whatever. We'll fucking talk about them.
I think a good way to end is to tell them one of the biggest themes in Westworld. I think the writers, or at least the show Westworld itself, is trying to allude something to the viewer, which if isn't painfully obvious by the end, then they're not doing their job correctly. But it's that, and I'll leave the audience with this. It's that we are puppets, but we don't have to be.
Oh. Yes.
Got no strings on me.
Yeah, got no strings on me.
Got no strings on me.
That's interesting. I thought the most important part of the story was have a night of dream of sleep.